Hello everyone, my name is Nathan and today it's time for another episode of Scrap Mechanic. In today's episode we are gonna build a simple calculator that will be able to add numbers up to 30. The reason we are not going crazier than that is simply because of the limitations of the game. It can only take so many connections and bearings. So this episode took me about 12 hours to prepare, just because I had to reinvent the system every time. My usual strategies with building calculators just didn't apply anymore. It is nothing like Minecraft, you do it absolutely differently. And I'm actually half glad that the game puts these limitations on me, because that made me come up with this system right here, and I think it is just great. Now, I took some inspiration from other games as well, how people solved it in other games, and I think this system right here is something that we could go ahead and start building together. Now, before I keep talking, let me just quickly show you the functionality of this calculator. Now, I'm hoping if you're watching this video, you do know what binary is. If you don't, then just let me take 10 seconds in order to explain you that. Right here I have two sets of inputs. One is the first number and then plus the other number. The way we can form these numbers is by adding these things together. So this right here I have set as the first bit, which represents number 1. Then you always double the number. So this would be number 2, this would be number 4 and number 8. So if I activate all of these buttons, I can create the number 15. Which is a plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, and that's why we can go up to 30, because 15 plus 15 equals 30. Then right here, this is actually my adder. I wanted to make this totally cool looking. Oh man, so many hours I invested in this thing, and I'm actually really proud that it works now. So let me show you that off. Let's go ahead and choose number 2 for instance, and you can see stuff is happening, and on the display we actually see the number 2. Then we want to add maybe number 4, so there we go, stuff is happening, and we have 6. Isn't that just great? Okay, let's go all the way up to 30, just add everything right there, and you can see this piston arm is expanding all the way, and we have displayed the number 30. Holy cow, guys. I mean, if you're now not interested in building this yourself, then I don't know how to help you. Now, during the process of developing this calculator, I also attempted to come up with ways to actually have, a not binary input, so that you could just have a numpad of some sorts. And I actually made a working one. However, the game won't let me combine these two ideas. I just would end up with 7 frames. I mean, right now it is just about 30 and very fluctuating. But it is still kind of working out if you lower your settings. So let's go into a new freaking world and actually start building this thing. Alright guys, here we are in a fresh world, completely empty. The frame rate is still good, but this will change eventually. However, what we want to start with is probably some kind of a platform. Let's see how much space we use. We are gonna add our inputs first of all. So this is the first number right here, and then we have the second number right next to it. And the positioning of these buttons will actually eventually change. This is just for visualization for you guys. Now, of course, these buttons will actually activate some kind of a controller, and we're gonna have a bunch of those guys in here. So we're gonna need 4 controllers for each number, which of course are gonna represent bit number 1 to bit number 4. Okay, there we go. Can you see it? So first input, second number input. So the next thing we want to do is kind of add a structure into this direction. We're gonna need lots of space in order to do so. Now, this doesn't work with logics and full adders. I actually had to come up with a much simpler solution, which is actually much easier to execute than you would anticipate. So since we are only adding stuff for the time being, we're not multiplying and everything, we can simply measure the distance. So for instance, pressing this button right here would result a piston to move one single block from one sensor to the next. And then adding this button right here would move it 2 blocks, this one would move it 4 blocks, etc. So we at all times know which number we are having, right? So that would mean probably on top of here or something would remain a bunch of sensors, and then we have our piston, which activates the sensor that is the current number, all the way up to sensor 30. So we're gonna need lots of sensors. However, in order to kind of figure out where the sensors are gonna go, we need to build our piston. And this piston is gonna be a very complicated piston. And I want to start a little bit further up. So I'm just gonna put this pipe right there. And then we are gonna take a curve. So this is the starting point of our piston, and if you remember, in order to build a piston, all you had to do, I'm just quickly gonna show that because that is really important that you understand it. So basically from this bearing we go up a little bit. So this is the same bearing as this one over here. Then we want to put another bearing right there, go all the way down, and put a third bearing right here, go all the way up again, or we can actually remain right here. And now we want to switch these bearings in a way so that it folds into this direction, the second bearing folds upwards, and the third bearing folds downwards again. And this will result in the piston movement. Now we have to combine various pistons together in order to make this function. Namely, we need all of the bits and we also need the two inputs. So in order to move something one block, we of course want to go with the smallest piston possible, which is simply a one block piston. And we want to have this bearing right here, then go all the way down again into this direction, and then we add the third bearing right here. So right here, this block should now actually move forwards one block once we hook it up to the controller. So maybe let's do that. We're gonna hook up this thing right here to the first, second and third bearing. And as I said, we want to make sure that this one is turning forwards, then this one is turning backwards, and this one forwards again. And then if we have a look into the controller, we can go to 90, minus 180, and 90, and I just figured that we don't need to turn this around because I chose minus 180. So it is already turning into the right direction. So if we hook this up to our first button right here, this would be the first bit. Then we can click this button and you can see the piston is moving while keeping this block very stable. However, we are now having a problem. As you can see, this piston is moving 2 blocks, even though I went with the lowest amount of blocks I can go with a piston. So we have to adjust these settings. We can only use this for the second one. We have to go with measurements of 30, minus 60, and 30, if I'm not mistaken. Let me actually quickly check that. Yeah, that looks about right. So now you can see it is exactly on the second spot. And if I press the button again, it will go to the number 0 sensor, which is right here. Okay, so now that we have the first bit of the first number, we need the first bit of the second number as well, which is why we are gonna add another piping system right here. And here is where we start the piston of the second number. So we need to go up, if you remember, then we need the second bearing, go down, and then right here we need the third bearing. Beautiful. So currently this block right here would be responsible to activate the sensors. However, we have only yet done the first bit. Now we need to go to the second bit, the third and the fourth bit, which of course is gonna result in tons of issues. So what we probably could do is move one over right here, and then we have to take yet another turn. And yes, of course that happens. We have to hook it up to this bit right here. We shouldn't forget to do that. So let's hook it all up. They are already facing into the correct direction. We only need to set 30, minus 60 and 30. And there we go, everything is stable again. Let's actually test it. With this we could already produce the number 2. So if I activate this block right here, you can see this piston is moving one block, and then if I activate this one, it is moving yet another block. And now of course you can imagine we can do the same thing with the second bit. We start with our piston right here, and now we have to move one more block. Which means since it worked out with the 90, minus 80, 90 variant, we are actually going to do that. So this is the second bearing, then we need a third bearing right here. Then we want to add yet another one. Yes, we are going to add the other piston right here. Second bearing, lead this all the way down back to the beginning, and the third bearing right here. There we go. And now we could theoretically again take the curve into the other direction and make the next bit. However, yes, of course, this would happen now. So let's hook up the second bit. It doesn't really matter in which order you are doing it. You just have to make sure that you are always grouping the 3 correct bearings together. So now we would have to go for this second bearing, and then last but not least for this third bearing right here. And in in this case, we need to switch all of these arrows so they are actually going forwards. And if we hook this up to our second bit button right here, we should be able to already expand that. Now, of course, we need to set the settings. So as I said, 90 minus 80, 90 for this one because we adjusted the piston correctly. And this seems to be working out as well. So let me quickly hook up the last 3 bearings right here in the correct order, of course. And sometimes if you are doing it late, stuff kind of tends to crash together. There we go. They are also facing into the wrong direction, and we want to do the settings 90 minus 80 and 90. There we go. Hook up the button. And we are already done with the second bit. There we go. I can now actually move already, let's see, 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. So 6 blocks from my original spot. And if we check that, we are currently right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. So this seems to be working out properly, and now we can actually continue with the third bit, which represents number 4. So this time we will have to move 4 blocks. And if you remember, fully expanded with this piston, we are moving 2 blocks. So the only thing we have to do is make it 1 block larger, because both piston arms will then be 1 block larger, and therefore we should be able to move 4 blocks. So let's do that. We are gonna once again take the curve right here, add the bearing, then go upwards. But this time we want to add an additional block in between, and then one right there. Then we want to have the bearing go down, take the curve, and then last but not least, this bearing here. Then we want to hook this up to our third input right there. Again, I want to make sure that we are again going into the right order. And I just see I added a bearing that is totally not necessary. Why didn't you tell me, guys? Yeah, this one right here is totally not necessary. We have to go right there, and then this bearing is the last one we hook up. Great, and since we already took the measurements of this piston correctly, all we have to do is again set 90, minus 180 and 90. There we go. So let's test this out. Currently we are right here, and we want to hook up the third button right there, and we want to be able to move the piston 4 blocks. So that's 1, 2, 3, and oh yes, of course, I did another mistake. I now know what I wanted to do. I wanted to add another pipe instead of the bearing. So now you can see we made it 2 larger. So there we go. Now it is fixed. It is at the correct location. Can you kind of see what I did there? So now if we expand it, we should be going, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. And then that's how the system works. I can add 1 more block. So instead of 4, we would now be moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so let me quickly repeat that for the third bit of the second number, and then we're gonna do one more example with the fourth bit. And after that, I'm gonna finish it off camera quickly. Okay, there we go. 3 bits are already done, nicely represented with these rows. Now we only have to do the 4th bit, which again needs to be doubly the size of those guys. And in order to do that, we can actually go with these pipes. It just kind of measures out the correct way. So let's add the first bearing for this piston, then we go upwards and then add one of these pipes. And then we need to try to put that stuff on. Oh no, come on. Yeah, there we go. This one here is misplaced. Here we have the second bearing. Take the curve down again, add one of those. Take the curve towards us. Oh, don't do this to me. There we go, and then we can add the last bearing. And now, of course, we need to hook this up to our 4th bit right there. Come on, don't do this to me. Oh no, it is already stuck in a very bad position here. But I think if we turn them around, maybe we can do something about that. They need to be 90, minus 80, 90 as well, because we measured it with the piston. We don't have to measure it with the angles, right? So let's see if we can actually do something about that, hooking up the 4th button, and yeah, unfortunately it is kind of stuck. So maybe just very briefly we are gonna switch this around, activate the button. There we go. And yes, I guess we have to switch this around too. Beautiful. Okay, now it is expanded. And now I should be able to retract this correctly. Yes, beautiful. Okay, now this piston is moving exactly 8 blocks. You can trust me. Great. Okay, now of course we need to rinse and repeat that for the first number right here. We only did this number here. So let me quickly finish that. Okay, and there we go, guys. This is the entire contraption. With that, we can calculate up to the number 15. So if we expanded this all way, no, that was not my intention. Apparently, I have somewhere a mistake in there. Okay, there we go. It should have finally worked. One last test, just expanding everything recklessly. Yes, there we go. So this should be exactly 30 blocks like this. Great, so now we need to add an intelligent system in order to activate the sensors, but we also need to take into consideration that we actually have two numbers on our display. So not only the ones, but also the tens will have to be counted. And for that, I actually want to grab myself another type of pipe, this one right here, the three-way pipe. There we go. I think we want to go, I'm not sure, one down here, because this must be the number 0, right? So now we need to kind of go into multiple directions. We first of all want to be able to go even further down. So we're gonna have a pipe facing into this direction and then kind of coming along right here. Yeah, I think somewhere along here we're gonna have the sensors, and then into this directions we are gonna count the tens. So what we have to do is count exactly 10 blocks. I believe that is 1, 2, 3 blocks. So that would be 6, 9, and then we round it off with one of those. So with this little line, we are actually gonna calculate the tens. However, this shall not be our concern immediately. What we want to grab now is, of course, the sensors. So let's check that out. I think we are done with the piping. We don't need those guys anymore. And we're gonna go with a nice metal block. Yes. So we're gonna have one type of sensor on this line, which makes me think that we're gonna have the other one on this line. So right here, we're gonna start with the other sensors. And of course, the first one would be right here being the number 0. And then we have to count 30 blocks into this direction and add sensors facing towards the pipe. So somewhat like this, and that would be number 0, then 1, 2, 3, and so on until we reach 30. Let me actually do that. I cannot commentate over things like that. There we go. I think that is 30 blocks. I just remembered I could just have expanded the piston arm, and then obviously where it ended would be number 30, but that's not stuff you think of while recording. However, you can now clearly see that this sensor here is activated, and I just see we might be able to add another pipe in between just to make things even clearer, so we can clearly see at which sensor it is currently pointing. Great, so this is basically all that we needed. The only thing that is left to do is the display, but this is already working. We could say, for instance, we want to calculate 2 plus 2. There we go, and you can see it is on number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we have already built a successful adder with only this system. Aren't you surprised? I mean, in Minecraft this took a lot more. So maybe since we are at that stage, we should also implement the functionality of counting the tens. The way we do that is adding another layer of plateau right there, and we want to start with a sensor facing upwards, actually like so. And you can see it is currently detecting this pipe here. So this is number 0, and even if we move to, for instance, number 4, you can see it is still detecting this pipe because we still haven't reached the number 10, or I actually activated, I activated number 8. So now if we add 2 more, you can see that we are on number 10. Oh, so I did a mistake here. Maybe we have to remove this pipe here. So if we add another sensor right there, now the first number on the display is 1, which it should be. It's not 09 anymore. It is now 10. So now let me actually quickly check that. That is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly. Great. Okay, I just made the pipe a little too long. So now we have number 10. Let's actually add 8 plus 2 again. So we reach number 20, and you can see right at this point, number 1 is not activated anymore. So with this sensor right here, we would then make the display show a number 2. And last but not least, we need to do it for number 30, which of course is all of the inputs activated. There we go, and that should be at the last sensor exactly right here. We want to start with 30. Right, so now we have done basically everything apart from showing the number in a display, and of course we want to do that too. Alright, there we go guys. I already took myself the liberty of building the first number for the display. Of course it's going to be a 2-digit display. We're going to do the same exact thing I did over here on the second number. Okay, so what we basically want to do is have 7 segments, because of course that's what we need in order to make all of the numbers. So the first segment we're gonna have right here at the bottom, and I want to leave one space free, then 3 for the segment, then another corner block free, and right here is where we are gonna have our other wall. So right here in the center I want to have my first bearing, then I also need the corner block free, then 1, 2, 3 for the segment. In the middle of the segment we would want the bearing. So let's actually place down the segments. I'm gonna make these out of metal blocks for the time being. We're gonna have them like so. Then another segment right here. And last but not least, one right there. Great, so now we already have the bottom 3 segments. Let's actually do the top 3 as well. I'm just gonna complete this wall right here because I know that is the exact distance that I need in order to do so. And now we can simply complete all of these segments like so. And of course, the only segment that is now missing is the center one. And in order to do so, we must be careful. We must actually build a few blocks backwards, and that is exactly what I've done right here. So I'm just gonna making some kind of a helper area onto which we can attach blocks. And what we probably want to do is go down even one more block so we can add it at the correct location, which is right here. So let me actually try to do that. Hop, hop, there we go. And add this last segment. Beautiful. Now, of course, we also need to hook those guys up to controllers. And we need to be careful that they don't get into each other's way. Now I just see I cannot use the same spot right here. However, as soon as we have placed the controllers, we shouldn't run into any issues anymore. So maybe for consistency's sake, we're gonna have these controllers right here. So I'm gonna remove those. We're gonna have 1 controller for the middle segment and then 3 more controllers on the top. So I'm actually also gonna place them right here. Of course, later on we want to patch up this stuff. But now we can clearly see which controller belongs to which segment, and we want to hook them all up individually. And of course, the only thing we have to do is set all of these controllers to plus 180 degrees. And why is that useful, you might ask? Of course, we can then attach another block, for instance, right here. We could do something like that. And if I use now a switch in order to turn this controller around, then the segment will turn around and therefore show a bright side. You know, something that gives off a good contrast. Okay, so let me actually hook everything up, and I'm also gonna set all the controllers to 180 degrees. Okay, there we go. Everything is prepared for the next step. We have 2 numbers. Now we want to first influence this number right here. We want to be able to enable all the various segments depending on which state we are in right now. In order to do that, we of course need 7 sensors for 7 segments. So let's add those guys right here. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yes. And then right around the corner right here on the very first spot. This is important. Don't go any further. You need to start right here because we need the full extent of the 10 blocks range this sensor has. So actually what we are gonna do is go up right here, and we're gonna start with our first bearing right here. So now anything that we turn into this direction is gonna go in front of the sensors, which is a bad idea. I actually want the bearing to be right here. That is a much better idea. Because what I want to do is actually add a controller in the back, and I think we need to do this far enough away. Maybe right here would be a good spot, somewhat like this, and we want to hook it up to this guy and change it into this direction so it goes in front of the sensor when we have something that is like so. However, I want to build it in this phase, so we are gonna go over. So we are gonna take another material. No, let's actually go with metal and do something like that. And in front of the sensors, I want to put down something that activates the sensors. Now, of course, this first number right here would then represent number 0. So you have to imagine that as soon as this sensor here is active, which is a number 0, we want to hook it up to this controller. We can actually test this out just to give a better impression on this. So we want to turn this in its default stage 90 degrees upwards. But as soon as we hook up this sensor, which currently is activated, then we can go down 90 degrees. And therefore, when we put something on top of these sensors, we can decide which sensor is going to be active depending on which sensor is active right here. So it basically means with one sensor, we are going to activate several ones. Now, of course, we need to dedicate each of these sensors to one of these segments. So let's actually do that in a logical manner. I think this is going to be like the bottom here. So we're going to have these 3 first sensors taking care of the bottom parts of the 7-segment display. There we go. We have 3 connection. Now the 4th button right here is obviously going to be the center. There we go. And then we have the last 3 ones, and we also want to make this somewhat logical, so we are gonna hook it up in the same manner we did the bottom 3. There we go. And now once we have done that, we simply need to put the pipes on the segments where we want them to be activated. So for instance, for number 0, the only segment we don't want activated is the center ones. So we want to put pipes here, 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 here. And now if we have a proper look at that, you can see the number 0 is being displayed. So as soon as I go to number 1, then this sensor actually shuts off, and therefore this thing went up, and therefore the number 0 is not displayed anymore. If we go back to number 0, this thing is going down, and of course number 0 is adjusting. And guys, this is really the entire system. Of course, it's not going to be as easy. There are still going to be a few complications. However, we can simply continue with the next numbers. Okay, there we go, much better, because now we can imagine where we can actually place the next number code, and it obviously is gonna go right here because we have to start with this level. No, obviously it is gonna go 1 block further into this direction. So we're kind of going in a zigzag pattern into this direction, and we have to do this for all 10 numbers. So let's actually go ahead and prepare this a little bit, since now we know what's up. Okay, right, we're gonna do one more number as an example, and then I'm gonna finish it off camera in order to save some time. We're gonna hook this second controller up to this bearing right here, which is responsible for the number 1. So we drag a line over here, and for the number 1 we want to activate, let's think, this is the top row, we want to activate this segment here and this one there, and this should display the number 1. Perfect. Let's do one more. This actually went really fast. Now, of course, that we have set the pipes up, we should also set this to -90 default and +90 when it's activated. And I just see, of course, also going into the wrong direction. But there we go. Now it is folded out and none of the segments is activated. Okay, let's do the next one. Bearing goes right here. We need the controller hooked up with this bearing. There we go. We want to switch this guy around, and then we want to start building it all the way up to there. So this would be number 2. These are the top segments. For number 2, we need the center top and we need the right top. Then we also need the center segment. And for the lower 3 segments, we need the left segment and the bottom segment. There we go. This should be number 2. Great, easy as that. So let me quickly finish that for all the numbers all the way up to 9. Remember, we did 0 already in the beginning, 1, 2, up to 9. And there we go, the next stage of the build has been reached. There's only a few more things to go. So I did everything for all the 9 numbers, and I also took myself the liberty of hooking up the second display, because you can do the same exact thing. However, you are only gonna need numbers 0 to 3. Except, of course, you are making a 5-bit calculator, but good luck with that in the current game state. There needs to happen a lot more optimization for that. But it's still kind of cool that we, we can go after this concept at all. So, for instance, we would want to show, let's say, number 20 on the display. I would have to hook up this guy and also the number 0. Or no, let's go with number 22. Why the heck not? There we go. So now if I click this button, these 2 things should react, and there we go, we have the number 22 over there. Great. Now, of course, the last issue we are running into is how to activate all the numbers. Because as you know, we cannot hook up, for instance, this sensor to this controller over there and then another sensor to this controller. This just doesn't work. What you can do is activate several controllers with one sensor, but you cannot use multiple sensors to activate one controller. Therefore, we need to activate OR gates instead. And then the OR gates are gonna control the controllers. So that means the number 0 for the second number here occurs 4 times, because we have it here at 0, then we have it at 10, then we have it at 20, and one more time at 30. So we need an OR gate with 4 inputs. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, we're gonna build the OR gate for the number 0 right here. We want to start with a sensor right here in the center, and then we want to add a block and a bearing on top of it. Let's actually go with a metal block too, bearing right here, and on top of the bearing, we are gonna hook up the controller, easy as that. So as I said, we wanted 4 different inputs for the number 0, therefore we're also gonna need 4 controllers. So that's what we're gonna do, hook up the controllers with a bearing in between each of those. There we go. Now of course we want to hook up each controller with the bearing it is attached to, and we actually want to change the direction of this a little bit. We want to start with the first controller and set this to -30 plus 15, and with the rest of the controllers we just have to go 15. And therefore, no matter which controller we activate, it is always gonna go directly into the sensor because it's going down 15 degrees. And there we go. So finally, this sensor is gonna be our number 0, and therefore we can hook it up to this controller. And what we also want to do is hook up this number 0 to any of these OR gates here. And since we have this number 0 already active, it just started to activate the controllers, and now we have the number 0 displayed. So if we actually go now to number 1, for instance, then you can see the controllers are going up again and the condition isn't true anymore. So the next thing we need to find is this number 0 right here. So we have to grab this guy and hook it up to our second controller, and so on and so forth. We want to grab the number 0 from the 20 spot right here, hook it up to our third controller, and I'm guessing you already know it. We're also gonna grab the 0 from the number 30 and hook it up to the fourth controller. And now no matter where we currently are, it should be working. So for instance, if we go to the number 10, then 0 is being displayed. If we go to the number 20, then also a 0 is being displayed. Great, now we only have to rinse and repeat this for all the numbers. Therefore we're gonna need an OR gate with 3 components for each number, because for instance number 1 right here occurs with 0, 1, with 11, and then with 21 again. 31 we don't have, so we only need 3 controllers for each number this time. Number 0 is an exception because it occurs 4 times. So let me actually prepare that. I'm gonna arrange an area such as this for each number, and I'm also going to hook each number up individually so we can actually enjoy the final results. And there we go. I thought we are gonna do the last 2 numbers together, otherwise you might get a little bit confused what has happened actually. The only thing I did is build OR gates for each of the numbers, so you can see this was number 0, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So we're gonna do 8 and 9 together. First of all, we want to hook those guys up and switch their direction. Then we want to set them to -30, 15 and only 15 plus for the additional OR gates. There we go. This guy is number 8, so we want to hook it up to the number 8 activation for the segments. There we go. And now, of course, we want to go through number 8, 18 and 28. So let's first do that. We are gonna choose number 8, so we know exactly where this guy is right here. And we are gonna grab it and hook it up to the gate that we just made. So this is number 8. Now we have to go for number 18. Let's see, for that we can add 8 plus 2, and then we have 18. Of course, then we're gonna run all the way over here and grab this guy, and we want to hook it up to our slot right there. And last but not least, we have the last slot, which is, let's see, all the buttons activated except the number 2, which equals in 28. There we go. So this guy is all the way over here. We're gonna grab that. Of course, you don't have to go with all the calculations, but I would love to see the system in the working while I'm hooking up stuff, because otherwise to debug this is kind of an impossibility. Great, so we've done number 8, let's also do the number 9. We are gonna do the same exact thing as before, but let me run through that a little bit quicker. There we go, added 15 to all of the segments. Then we want to hook up this guy to the number 9. Yes, I think that was the correct one. And then of course, activate number 9. Let's see where the first one starts, all the way over here. You can see it now in the frame rate, but if you actually restart the world, it's getting much better. But as long as you're doing hooking up stuff, it is kind of a torture. Anyways, we want to add 10 more, so we get the number 19, and then we are practically done. We only need to hook up the first number still, which is going to be much easier. So there we go. This should also display a number 9. Yes, and we want to go with, let's see, 29. So activate everything except bit 1, and there we go, 29. Of course, it is the second to last. We're gonna hook it up right here, and we should be done with this display. Now, of course, the only thing we have to do is hook up these guys to the individual numbers of the first number on the display, which is going to be a 0. I think I started here. So this would be the number 0. And then we need to go ahead and grab this second guy here, which represents number 1, if I'm not mistaken. So we hook it up right there. Then we have the number 2, which we're going to hook up right here, and number 3, which we are going to hook up to the last one. There we go. And since... Oh no, I think I did something wrong. Yes, I did it the other way around. So I'm guessing this one right here is number 0. Let me actually quickly fix that. I just did it the other way around. Okay, there we go. Now they are hooked up to the correct one. So this one is hooked up to the 0 segment display thingy, and now we have a 29 displayed right here. And no matter what we now do, it will always work. So for instance, now we have 8 plus 15, which should be 23. Oh yes, guys, we did it. We successfully built a calculator, and I just love this system. Even though it is just an adder, you cannot do much more currently in the game. But of course, once the game is much more optimized and will allow us to go crazier with these things, I will definitely do it. But other than that, I sure hope you enjoyed this tutorial, kind of. Let me know if you successfully built one calculator yourself. Let me know about improvements we could add to this baby. Maybe some optimization things, using less sensors, using less bearings. I mean, kind of the OR gates are the killer. Before adding the OR gates, everything is actually more or less fine frame rate wise. I mean, it's still over 30 at times, so I'm happy with the results. Now, of course, you would have to patch up this baby right here, making sure that you are not getting in the way of the rotation of the segments, and just make everything look nice. You can hide this, but I kind of like to look at it because it is just fantastic how this piston expands, and then on the back you can see everything reacting accordingly, setting up the numbers. It is great. Well guys, I think we're leaving it at that. This took me a very long time to figure out and produce, so I would really appreciate some feedback or a like. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, have a great time, and hopefully I'm gonna catch you soon. Bye bye.